They said betrayal would break her. They were wrong. Adeline stood at the cliff's edge, the stolen fang burning against her chest, her mate's hunters closing in behind her. Below, the river roared, certain death. Behind her, Brent's voice cut through the rain. "You're nothing without me." She'd been nothing with him. The choice was simple: drown as a wolf's discarded mate, or leap and become something they'd never forget. If you want to know how a broken she-wolf became the most feared woman in the North, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. The scent of jasmine and lies hung thick in the air. Adeline's wolf whimpered inside her chest as she pressed herself against the rough bark of the oak tree, hidden in shadow just beyond the main house. Through the window, golden light spilled across familiar wooden floors she'd walked barefoot across 1,000 mornings, believing she was home. She'd been a fool. "She'll never know." Brent's voice drifted through the open window, casual and cruel. "Adeline's too weak to suspect anything, too desperate to be loved." The woman's laugh was sharp, musical. Adeline recognized it instantly. Lisa, the beta's daughter, the she-wolf who'd smiled at her over dinner just 3 nights ago. "You're terrible keeping her around this long. Why not just reject her?" "Because," Brent said, and Adeline could hear the smirk in his voice, "her family's alliance with the Eastern Pax is still useful. Once that's secured, I'll cast her aside. Until then, she serves her purpose." The words landed like silver bullets in Adeline's chest. Serves her purpose. 6 years. 6 years of devotion, of shaping herself into whatever he needed, of ignoring the whispers and the pitying looks from the pack. 6 years of telling herself the mate bond meant something sacred, that his coldness was just the weight of leadership, that she was being dramatic when his hands lingered too long on other she-wolves at gatherings. 6 years of being a fool. Her fingers dug into the bark hard enough to draw blood. The mate bond thrummed painfully under her skin. A connection she'd once thought was destiny now revealed as nothing but a biological chain. She wanted to rip it out of herself, to claw through her own chest and tear free of him. But beneath the agony, something else stirred. Rage. It started as a tremor in her hands and spread like wildfire through her veins. Not the hot, explosive anger she'd learned to swallow down over the years, but something colder, sharper, the kind of fury that cut clean through grief and left only clarity in its wake. They used you. They all did. The entire pack watched you shrink yourself down to nothing, and they said nothing. Adeline's wolf snarled in agreement, no longer whimpering but rising, teeth bared, ready. Through the window, she watched Brent pull Lissa close, watched him touch her the way he'd never touched his own mate in months, watched them laugh together at her expense, at her weakness, at her desperate, pathetic love. "The Eastern Alliance ceremony is in 2 weeks, Brent was saying. "After that, I'll make it official. You'll be Luna, like you should have been from the start." Lissa's voice turned playful. "And what about the relic? The fang?" Brent's expression shifted, became guarded. "What about it?" "Come on, baby. Everyone knows you've been keeping it in your study. Ancient wolf magic, right? They say it belonged to the first alpha, that it holds the power of the original bloodline." Lissa traced a finger down his chest. "Imagine what we could do with power like that. We could unite the packs under our rule, become the strongest—" "Don't talk about things you don't understand," Brent cut her off, suddenly harsh. "The fang is dangerous, unpredictable. My father spent decades trying to master it and nearly went mad. It stays locked away." But Adeline saw the way his eyes flickered toward the hallway, toward his private study. The fang. She'd heard the stories, the pack legends whispered around winter fires, an ancient relic from the first alpha, imbued with primal magic so powerful it could level mountains or heal the dying, depending on the wielder's will. Brent's father had kept it hidden, protected by blood wards and pack law, and when he died, the fang passed to Brent as the new alpha. Brent had never mentioned it to her, not once in 6 years. Of course he hadn't. She was just the weak, useful mate, not someone to share power with. But what if you took it from him? The thought struck like lightning, audacious and insane and right. Her wolf surged with approval, with hunger. Adeline's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. They wanted to cast her aside like garbage? Wanted to use her until she'd outlived her purpose? Fine, but she wouldn't leave empty-handed. Moving silently, skills learned from childhood hunts that she'd let atrophy over years of playing the demure mate. Adeline slipped away from the window and circled toward the back of the house. The study was on the second floor, accessible through Brent's private entrance. She'd only been inside once, early in their mating, before he'd made it clear certain spaces weren't for her. The lock was simple. Brent had grown complacent, secure in his power, never imagining anyone would dare challenge him in his own territory. The door swung open with barely a whisper. Brent's study was exactly as she remembered. Dark wood, heavy furniture, walls lined with pack records and territorial maps. But now she saw it differently. Not as the impressive domain of an alpha, but as the cage of a small, cruel man who needed to steal and manipulate to feel powerful. Her eyes found the safe immediately, behind a painting of the first alpha, because Brent had never been particularly creative. The combination would be harder, but as she approached, her wolf stirred with certainty. Try his father's death date. It clicked open on the first attempt. Inside, wrapped in black velvet, lay the fang. It was longer than her hand, curved and ancient, the bone yellowed with age, but somehow still radiating raw power. The moment her fingers brushed against it, electricity shot up her arm. The fang hummed, a vibration she felt in her bones, in her blood, in the deepest parts of her wolf soul. And for just a second, she could have sworn it whispered, "Finally." Adeline grabbed it, velvet and all, and shoved it into the inner pocket of her jacket, the weight of it pressed against her heart, warm and alive. She was halfway to the window when the door slammed open. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Brent stood in the doorway, Lissa behind him, both of them staring at her with expressions of pure shock. Brent's eyes dropped to the open safe, to her hand pressed against her jacket pocket, and his face transformed into something monstrous. "You dare!" Adeline ran. She launched herself through the window in a shower of glass, hitting the ground hard and rolling. Her wolf surged forward, bones cracking and reforming as she shifted mid-run, her clothes shredding away. The fang stayed pressed against her chest, somehow moving with her, becoming part of her. Behind her, Brent's roar shook the trees. "Hunters, after her! Bring me that relic in her head!" The forest erupted with movement, pack wolves pouring out of houses, warriors shifting and giving chase, the entire territory mobilizing to hunt down their alpha's mate. Former mate, Adeline thought with savage satisfaction as she ran. "I'm nobody's anymore." She pushed herself harder than she ever had, muscles screaming, lungs burning. The fang pulsed against her chest in rhythm with her heartbeat, feeding her strength she didn't know she possessed. Trees blurred past. The sounds of pursuit grew louder, dozens of wolves, trained hunters, all of them faster and stronger than her. She'd never been the fighter, never been the strong one. She'd been decorative, diplomatic, useful. But the hunted could still survive if she was clever enough. Adeline veered sharply east, toward the river gorge. It was suicide territory. The Bloodwater River ran fast and deadly this time of year, swollen with spring melt from the mountains. The gorge was treacherous even in daylight, a maze of sharp rocks and sudden drops. In the dark, with a storm rolling in, only the desperate or insane would go there. Perfect. Thunder cracked overhead as the first raindrops fell. Within seconds, it became a deluge, cold and blinding. Adeline skidded through mud and pine needles, her paws struggling for purchase on increasingly slick ground. The roar of the river grew louder, competing with the thunder and the howls of her pursuers. She burst through a line of trees and nearly went over the edge. The gorge opened before her like a wound in the earth, 40 feet of empty air above churning white water and rocks that could shred a wolf to pieces. The opposite bank was too far to jump. Even a strong wolf would struggle, and she was already exhausted. Behind her, branches snapped, voices shouted, "There! She's cornered!" "Don't let her escape with the fang. The alpha wants her alive, barely!" Adeline shifted back to human form, naked and shaking in the rain, her hands clutching the velvet-wrapped fang to her chest. She turned to face them. 15 warriors emerged from the trees, shifting to human form, circling her against the cliff's edge. Brent pushed through them, his face twisted with fury and something else. Fear. Fear of what she'd done, what she'd taken, what she'd become in the space between his betrayal and this moment. "Adeline." He held out his hand, voice straining for calm. "Give me the fang. This is madness. You don't understand what you're holding." "Don't I?" Her voice came out stronger than she expected, cutting through the storm. Or do I understand perfectly? You never planned to keep me. I was just a tool, a bridge to an alliance. 6 years of my life wasted on a man who couldn't even bother to hide his contempt. You were honored to be my mate. I was your slave. The words ripped out of her, 6 years of swallowed pain finally finding voice. I molded myself into whatever you needed, gave up everything I was, and you repaid me with lies and mockery and another woman in our bed. Lissa stepped forward, her beautiful face cruel in the lightning flash. You were never strong enough to be Luna. You should be grateful he kept you as long as he did. The warriors murmured agreement. They'd all known. Every single one of them had watched her humiliation and said nothing. Adeline's grip on the fang tightened. It pulsed again, stronger now, and she felt something vast and ancient stir within it, responding to her rage. The fang, Brent said carefully, is bound by blood to the alpha line. It won't obey you. Whatever you think you'll accomplish. I'm not trying to accomplish anything, Adeline said. I'm just taking something you love, the way you took 6 years from me. Consider us even. She stepped backward, her heel finding empty air. Brent's eyes widened. Don't! Goodbye, Brent. Adeline let herself fall. The last thing she saw before the darkness swallowed her was Brent's face, shocked and reaching, finally feeling a fraction of the loss he'd inflicted on her. Then she hit the water, and the world became chaos. The Bloodwater River lived up to its name. The current grabbed her like a giant's fist and dragged her under, spinning her through darkness and cold that drove the air from her lungs. She couldn't tell up from down. Her limbs flailed uselessly against the current's terrible strength. This is how I die, she thought distantly. Alone and broken, just like he wanted. But the fang blazed against her chest, suddenly burning hot. No! The voice wasn't hers, wasn't her wolf's. It was older, deeper, resonating through her bones. Power flooded through her veins like liquid lightning. Her wolf surged forward without conscious thought, and she shifted in the water, fur providing just enough insulation against the cold. Her paws found rock. She kicked hard, following instinct and the fang's pulsing guidance. Her head broke the surface just long enough to gasp air before another wave pulled her under. Again. Again. Breathe, fight, survive. She slammed into a boulder and nearly passed out from the pain. Her ribs screamed. Blood clouded the water. Hers or the river's name made manifest, she couldn't tell. Keep going. The fang's voice, or perhaps her own will to live wearing the fang's power like armor. She didn't know how long she fought the river. Time became meaningless, just an endless cycle of pain and water and the desperate need for air. But gradually, the current's fury lessened. The river widened, slowed, became navigable. Adeline's paws touched mud. She crawled more than swam toward the bank, every muscle trembling with exhaustion. When she finally dragged herself onto solid ground, she collapsed, shifting back to human form without meaning to, too depleted to maintain her wolf. She lay there in the mud and rain, coughing up river water, her body a symphony of agony. The fang had fallen from her grasp and lay beside her, bone white against dark earth, no longer glowing but somehow still present, still aware. She'd survived. Against all odds, against the river and her mate's hunters and her own weakness, she'd survived. But for how long? The pack would be searching both banks. Brent wouldn't stop until he recovered the fang, and her death would be a convenient bonus. She had no clothes, no supplies, no allies. She was deep in neutral territory, miles from any pack that might shelter her, and gravely injured. Get up, her wolf whispered weakly. We didn't survive the river just to die in the mud. Adeline reached for the fang with trembling fingers. The moment she touched it, warmth spread through her again. Not the burning power from before, but something gentler. Healing. Her ribs stopped screaming. The cuts on her skin knitted closed, leaving only faint scars. What are you? She whispered to the relic. It didn't answer in words, but she felt its ancient approval, its recognition of something in her that even she didn't understand yet. She forced herself to stand, naked and shaking but alive. The rain was lessening, dawn beginning to gray the eastern sky. She needed to move, to find shelter before Brent's hunters picked up her trail. Adeline stumbled forward into the trees, the fang clutched to her chest, her future uncertain, but finally, terrifyingly, her own. She made it perhaps a mile before her legs gave out. This time when she fell, she didn't get back up. The healing surge from the fang had taken the last of her strength. Darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. In the distance, she heard wolves howling, pursuit or just wild packs. She couldn't tell anymore. I tried, she thought as consciousness slipped away. At least I tried. The last thing she felt before the blackness took her was the fang's warmth against her heart, steady as a second heartbeat, and the strange sensation of being carried, though by what or whom she couldn't say. When Adeline woke, she was warm. The wrongness of it jolted her fully conscious. She should be cold, dead, or dying in a forest. Instead, she lay on something soft beneath heavy furs, a fire crackling somewhere nearby, the scent of pine and leather and something else, something that made her wolf stir with confused recognition. Alpha. But not Brent. This scent was colder, wilder, threaded with power that made Brent's authority seem like a child playing at kingship. Adeline's eyes flew open. She was in a cabin, rustic but well-made, the logs fitted together with expert precision. Dawn light filtered through a window, illuminating rough-hewn furniture and weapons mounted on the walls. Not decorative, but tools worn with use. A fire burned in a stone hearth, and beside it, in a chair that seemed too small for his frame, sat a man. No, not just a man. The man. Even sitting, he radiated barely contained power. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell past his collar, and eyes like winter ice, pale gray-blue, and just as merciless. His face was all hard angles and sharp edges, handsome in the way a blade was handsome, beautiful and dangerous. Scars crossed his knuckles, and one traced from his temple into his hairline. He wore simple clothing, dark shirt, worn pants, boots, but his presence filled the room like a physical force. Adeline knew him immediately. Everyone in the Northern Territories knew him. Alec Vulov, the Ice King, alpha of the Frostclaw Pack and ruler of the Northern Reaches. The man who'd united the savage mountain packs through sheer dominance, who'd held his territory against all challengers for 15 years, who was rumored to have killed his own father in combat for the right to lead. The man whose territory she'd just stumbled into, carrying a stolen relic, running from her own pack. "You're awake," he said. His voice matched the rest of him, deep, cold, completely controlled. Adeline tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through her torso despite the fang's earlier healing. She looked down and realized she was wearing a shirt. His shirt, several sizes too large, falling to mid-thigh. Someone had bandaged her ribs and treated the worst of her cuts. Someone had saved her life. "The fang," she gasped. "Where?" "On the table beside you." Alec gestured with one hand, his expression unreadable. "I didn't touch it. Seemed unwise, given how it reacted when I tried to move you." Adeline's eyes found the velvet-wrapped relic, exactly where he said. Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by wariness. "You know what it is?" Everyone north of the divide knows what the first Alpha's fang looks like. Those winter eyes studied her with unsettling intensity. "The question is how Brent Thorne's mate ended up half dead in my forest, clutching it like a lifeline." Former mate, she wanted to say, but the bond still pulled at her insides, a connection she couldn't sever no matter how much she wanted to. "I'm not his mate anymore," she said instead, voice hoarse. "Not in any way that matters. The bond says otherwise." It wasn't a question. Alphas could sense such things, especially one as powerful as Alec. Bonds can be lies. Adeline met his gaze despite every instinct screaming at her to submit to the dominant wolf in the room. "I learned that the hard way." Something flickered in Alec's expression, not quite sympathy, but perhaps understanding. "So you stole his most valuable possession and threw yourself into Bloodwater Gorge. Dramatic." "I survived. Barely." He stood moving to the fire, and Adeline realized he was even larger than she'd thought. "I found you unconscious 3 miles from the riverbank. You should be dead 10 times over. The fall, the river, the cold, the blood loss. Yet here you are." He didn't ask how. His eyes drifted to the fang, and Adeline understood he'd already guessed. "It chose me," she said quietly. "I don't know why, but it did." Relics don't choose. They're tools, weapons, sources of power to be controlled. Tell that to the fang. Alex's laugh was unexpected, sharp and short, more exhale than humor. You've got spine, I'll give you that. Most wolves cower when they meet me. Most wolves haven't already thrown themselves off a cliff today. The bar for frightening is considerably higher. This time his smile actually reached his eyes, though it didn't make him look any less dangerous. Fair enough. He turned fully toward her, and Adeline felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. Here's your situation. You're in my territory without permission, carrying a stolen relic that belongs to another alpha, wanted by that alpha and his entire pack. By rights, I should return you to Brent Thorne and collect the favor he'd owe me. Fear spiked through her chest, but Adeline refused to let it show. Then why haven't you? Because the Fang did choose you, whether you understand why or not. And I'm curious to see what happens when someone Brent Thorne considered weak and disposable wields power he couldn't master in 5 years of trying. He moved closer, each step deliberate, until he stood beside the bed looking down at her. This close, she could see the threads of silver in his dark hair, the old scars that marked him as a warrior, the absolute certainty in his eyes. So here's my offer, Adeline Thorne. You can stay here under my protection until you're healed, and we figure out what the Fang wants with you. In exchange, you tell me everything about Brent's pack, defenses, alliances, weaknesses, the Eastern Treaty ceremony he's planning. Adeline's breath caught. You want to move against him? I want to be prepared if he moves against me. A stolen relic is excellent justification for war, and Brent's always been ambitious. If he comes north looking for blood, I prefer to know what I'm facing. Alex's smile turned sharp. Considerate payment for saving your life. It was manipulation, obviously, a calculated exchange of debts and information. But it was also honest manipulation, which was more than Brent had ever given her. And the alternative was to walk back into the forest alone, hunted, with no allies and enemies closing in. One condition, Adeline said. Alec raised an eyebrow. You're not exactly in a position to negotiate. I don't give you the Fang. It stays with me. No one touches it. No one studies it. No one tries to use it. Whatever information or help I provide, the Fang isn't part of the deal. For a long moment, Alec said nothing, his ice blue eyes searching her face. Then slowly he nodded. Agreed. The Fang is yours until you decide otherwise. He extended his hand. Adeline looked at it, scarred, powerful, offering her a lifeline she didn't deserve and couldn't refuse. She thought of Brent's hands, smooth and deceptive, promising love while planning betrayal. These hands promised nothing but an honest exchange. She reached out and clasped his hand in hers. The moment their skin touched, power arced between them. Not the mate bonds pull, but something else entirely. The Fang blazed hot against her chest, and Alec's eyes widened fractionally. They both let go quickly, but the sensation lingered. Well, Alec said after a pause, his voice carefully neutral, that was unexpected. Adeline could still feel the echo of it, whatever it was. What just happened? I don't know. He flexed his hand, studying it with a frown. But I suggest we find out before Brent Thorne's hunters reach my borders. Through the window, the morning sun climbed higher, burning off the last of the storm. Somewhere south, Adeline knew, Brent would be mobilizing his forces, calling in favors, preparing to reclaim what she'd stolen. Let him come. She'd spent 6 years being the weak one, the useful one, the one who bent and broke to make others comfortable. That woman had died in the Bloodwater River. Whatever she was now, whoever she was becoming with the Fang's power singing in her blood and the Ice King's protection around her, she would never be that broken thing again. When do we start? Adeline asked. Alec's smile was all teeth. Now. The Ice King's fortress was nothing like Brent's territory. Where Brent had built his pack around comfort and appearance, manicured grounds, grand halls designed to impress visiting alphas, Alec's domain was pure function. The main compound sat carved into the mountainside itself, stone and timber blending seamlessly with the harsh landscape. Warriors moved through the courtyard with military precision, their eyes sharp, their bodies honed for survival in the brutal north. No one smiled. No one gossiped. They simply trained, patrolled, and watched Adeline with undisguised suspicion. They think I'm a spy, Adeline said, watching a group of wolves track her movements from across the yard. She stood beside Alec on a balcony overlooking the compound, wrapped in borrowed furs against the mountain cold. 3 days had passed since he'd found her, and her strength was returning, but the hostile stares hadn't lessened. "They think you're a complication," Alec corrected. "Brent's mate appears in my territory carrying a stolen relic on the eve of war. My wolves aren't fools." "Former mate? The bond hasn't been severed. Semantics won't change how they see you." He glanced at her, those winter eyes unreadable. "You want their respect? Earn it." "How? I'm not a warrior. I was never trained to fight." "Then you'd better learn quickly." Alec pushed off the railing. "Because in 2 days, Brent will reach my borders with his hunting party. When he does, I need to know if you'll stand with my pack or run back to him the moment things get difficult." The accusation stung because part of her understood it. 6 years of conditioning didn't vanish in 3 days. The mate bond still pulled at her chest, a constant ache that whispered she'd made a mistake, that she should return and beg forgiveness, that she was nothing without Brent's approval. But the fang pulsed warm against her skin, and the memory of his betrayal burned hotter than any bond. "I won't run," Adeline said quietly. "Prove it. Training yard, dawn tomorrow. My second will test you." He walked away before she could respond, leaving her alone with the wind and the watching eyes of wolves who had no reason to trust her. That night, Adeline dreamed of the river. In the dream, she drowned over and over, the current dragging her down while Brent stood on the shore, laughing. But each time the water filled her lungs, the fang blazed to life, forcing her back to the surface, refusing to let her surrender to the darkness. "You are not his anymore," the ancient voice whispered. "You were never meant to be small." She woke gasping, the fang clutched in her hand, its bone surface warm and alive. Through the window, false dawn painted the sky gray. Somewhere in the compound, she heard the sounds of warriors beginning their morning routines, the clash of practice weapons, the rhythmic thud of running feet. Adeline rose and dressed in the simple clothing Alec had provided: tough leather pants, a fitted shirt, boots designed for fighting rather than appearance. She braided her hair back tight, studying her reflection in the small mirror. She looked different, harder. The soft roundness Brent had preferred was gone, burned away by 3 days of near starvation and the fang's strange magic. Her eyes held something new, not quite confidence, but the raw edge of someone who'd survived the unsurvivable. The training yard was already crowded when she arrived. Word had spread. Dozens of wolves lined the perimeter, arms crossed, expressions ranging from curiosity to open contempt. In the center of the yard, a woman waited. She was magnificent, tall and powerfully built, with copper hair pulled into a warrior's knot and scars crisscrossing her arms. Her stance radiated competence and barely contained violence. This was someone who'd earned her position through blood and skill, not politics or family connections. "Kira," Alex said, appearing at Adeline's side. "My second. She'll evaluate your combat readiness." "Combat readiness?" Adeline's laugh came out sharp. "I told you, I'm not a fighter. I don't know what you expect." "I expect you to try not to embarrass yourself." Alex's voice was cold, public, nothing like their private conversations. Playing to the crowd, she realized, showing his pack that he wouldn't coddle the southern wolf who'd brought danger to their door. "If you want my protection, you contribute to the pack. That means proving you're not dead weight." The watching wolves murmured approval. Someone called out, "Send her back to Thorn. We don't need weak southerners here." Adeline's hands clenched. The fang hidden beneath her shirt thrummed against her chest. "Prove it," Alec had said. She stepped into the ring. Kira's smile was all predator. "First time in a combat circle, little mate?" "Former mate," Adeline corrected automatically. "Still wearing his bond mark, still smelling of southern softness." Kira circled her slowly. "The Alpha says I should test you. I say we're wasting time. You should be in a cell, not training with warriors." The crowd agreed, their voices rising. They wanted her gone, this interloper who'd brought her troubles north, who might be a spy, who was everything they'd learned to despise about the soft southern packs. Adeline's wolf stirred, hackles raised, tired of being judged and found wanting. "Then test me," she said. Kira moved. The attack came faster than Adeline could track, a blur of motion that ended with Kira's fist connecting with her ribs. Pain exploded through her chest. She stumbled back, barely keeping her feet, and Kira was already following up with a leg sweep that sent Adeline crashing to the dirt. The crowd jeered. Pathetic. She can't even block. The Alpha's gone soft harboring trash like this. Adeline tried to rise, but Kira's boot pressed against her chest, pinning her down. The second leaned close, voice low enough only Adeline could hear. Stay down. Except you don't belong here. It'll be easier for everyone. The mate bond throbbed in Adeline's chest, painful and insistent. Give up. Go back. You were never meant for this life. You were meant to be quiet and useful and small. But beneath the bond's pull, the fang burned. Stand up. Adeline's hand shot out, grabbing Kira's ankle. The moment they connected, power surged. Not the overwhelming force from the river, but something more controlled, precise. Kira's eyes widened as her leg buckled, suddenly unable to support her weight. Adeline rolled free and scrambled to her feet. The crowd went silent. Kira recovered quickly, her expression shifting from contempt to genuine interest. Well, maybe you've got some teeth after all. She attacked again, but this time Adeline was ready. The fang's power flowed through her veins like liquid lightning, not controlling her movements but enhancing them, making her faster, stronger, more aware. She dodged Kira's punch by a hair's breadth, felt the displaced air against her cheek. Trust yourself, the fang whispered. Trust me. Adeline stopped thinking and moved on instinct. When Kira feinted left, Adeline read the real attack coming from the right and blocked it. When Kira tried to sweep her legs again, Adeline jumped, her enhanced reflexes turning the dodge into a graceful leap. She wouldn't win. Kira had decades of training and experience, but she didn't have to win. She just had to prove she could stand. They exchanged blows for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Kira landed hits that would have crippled an ordinary wolf, but the fang's magic kept Adeline moving, healing her even as she fought. Adeline got in her own strikes, clumsy, untrained, but backed by desperate determination and ancient power. Finally, Kira stepped back, breathing hard, a smile of genuine respect on her face. Enough! She offered her hand. You'll do? The crowd's reaction was mixed, some still hostile, others grudgingly impressed. Adeline clasped Kira's hand, her entire body shaking with exhaustion and adrenaline. The relic's doing most of the work, someone called out. Take it away, and she's nothing. Adeline turned toward the voice, found a young male warrior glaring at her. Others nodded agreement. They weren't wrong. Without the fang, she would have been broken in seconds. But the fang had chosen her, and that had to mean something. Then come take it from me, Adeline said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. The young warrior stepped forward, but Alec's command cracked like a whip. Stand down, Marcus! The warrior froze, eyes dropping in submission. Alec descended from the balcony where he'd been watching, his presence immediately dominating the yard. The test is complete. Kira's satisfied. That should be enough. Satisfied she can fight with stolen magic, Marcus protested. That's not strength, Alpha. That's dependence. What happens when the relic turns on her, when it corrupts her like it corrupted Thorn's father? Others murmured agreement. The Fang's history was known, power came at a price, and that price was often madness. Alec's eyes found Adeline's, and she saw the question there. How do you answer this? She could make excuses, could explain that the Fang was different with her, that it helped rather than controlled. But words wouldn't convince warriors who'd learned to trust only what they could see and touch and fight. You're right, Adeline said, addressing Marcus directly. I don't know how to fight. I wasn't raised to be a warrior. I was raised to be decorative and diplomatic, to smile and bow and make other wolves comfortable. Her voice hardened. But I'm learning, and yes, the Fang gives me power I haven't earned through training, but it chose me anyway, and I'm going to figure out why, with or without your approval. She pulled the Fang from beneath her shirt, holding it up so everyone could see. The morning sun caught the ancient bone, making it gleam. If you think it's corrupting me, watch closely. If you see me becoming a threat to this pack, put me down. She met Alec's gaze. That includes you, Alpha. The silence stretched taut. Then Alec laughed, a genuine sound that startled half the watching wolves. Fair enough. He turned to address the yard. Adeline stays. She trains with the warriors until Brent arrives. After that, we'll see what she's really made of. It wasn't acceptance, but it was a chance, The crowd dispersed slowly, still muttering, but the edge of hostility had dulled slightly. Kira approached as Adeline tucked the fang away. That was either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. Good. Brave and stupid warriors make the best stories. Kira's expression sobered. But Marcus wasn't wrong about the relic. Power like that always demands payment. Watch yourself. She walked away, leaving Adeline alone with Alec. You took a risk, he said quietly. Showing them the fang like that. They already knew I had it. Hiding it wouldn't change anything. Adeline wiped blood from her split lip. One of Kira's punches had landed clean. Besides, you wanted me to prove I could stand. Had to do it somehow. Most wolves would have used the mate bond as an excuse. I'm too traumatized to fight. I need time to heal. Please protect me from the consequences of my choices. His tone was neutral, observational. Is that what you expected? I don't know what I expected from you. Alex studied her with that unnerving intensity. But you keep surprising me. Before she could respond, a warrior ran into the yard, breathing hard. Alpha, scouts report movement on the southern border. Thorn's hunting party. They're a day ahead of schedule. Alex's expression went cold and hard. How many? 20 warriors. Thorn himself leads them. They're demanding entry to retrieve stolen property and a runaway mate. The words hit Adeline like fists. Brent was here. Actually here, come to drag her back or kill her. She couldn't guess which. The mate bond flared painfully in her chest, recognizing his proximity, trying to pull her toward him. 6 years of conditioning screamed that she should go to him, should apologize, should submit before things got worse. But the fang burned hotter, and Adeline stood her ground. Prepare the border guard, Alec ordered. Full defensive positions. If Thorn wants his mate back, he can ask nicely. But he comes armed into my territory, he's declaring war. Alpha. The scout hesitated. Thorn sent a message. He requests parley, just him and you, at the border stones at sunset, to discuss terms. Terms, Alec repeated flatly. He brings 20 warriors to my door and asks for terms. He says he wants to avoid bloodshed, that this is a personal matter, not pack business. Adeline's laugh was bitter. He's lying. Brent doesn't do anything that isn't pack business. He's looking for weakness, trying to assess your defenses. Obviously. Alec's gaze remained fixed on the scout. Tell Thorn I'll meet him at sunset. Just the two of us, neutral ground. If he brings more than himself and one witness, I'll consider it a declaration of war. The scout nodded and ran off. Adeline's heart hammered against her ribs. You're actually going to negotiate with him? I'm going to let him make his case. Then I'll decide whether to return you or go to war over a wolf I met 3 days ago. Alec's expression gave nothing away. What happens at that meeting depends entirely on what he offers and what you're worth to me politically. The words stung, but they were honest. Alec had saved her life, but he was still an alpha with a pack to protect. If returning her to Brent prevented a war his wolves didn't need, he'd do it. She couldn't even blame him. I understand, Adeline said quietly. Do you? Alec stepped closer, and she caught his scent, pine and snow and something wild. Because I'm not sure you do. You asked for protection, but protection comes with expectations. If I refuse to return you to Thorn, I need to know you're committed to this pack. Not running at the first sign of difficulty. Not letting that mate bond drag you back to him. The bond is just biology. It doesn't control me. Doesn't it? His eyes dropped to her chest where she knew he could see the faint scar, the mate mark Brent had left when they'd bonded. I can smell it on you, pulling at you even now. You're in pain just being this close to him. He was right. The bond throbbed worse with each passing moment, a living thing trying to reconnect with its other half. It whispered that she was making a mistake, that Brent would forgive her if she just apologized, that they could still have the life she'd wanted. The fang pulsed once, sharp and definite. Lies. Yes, it hurts, Adeline admitted. It'll hurt until one of us is dead or I find a way to break it. But pain doesn't mean I'll crawl back to him. I'd rather die. You might get that chance. Alec turned toward the fortress. Sunset's in 6 hours. I suggest you decide what you're willing to sacrifice for your freedom. Because if I go to war with Brent Thorn over you, I'll expect you to fight beside my wolves. No hiding, no hesitation. Can you do that? Could she? 3 days ago, she couldn't even throw a proper punch. Now he was asking if she'd stand in battle against her former pack, against wolves she'd known for years, against Brent. The mate bond screamed in protest at the thought, but the fang hummed with approval. "Yes," Adeline said, "I can do that." Alex's smile was sharp as broken ice. "Then let's go meet your mate and see what he's willing to trade for your return." The border stones stood at the exact line where Alex's territory met neutral ground, ancient markers placed by the first packs, imbued with magic that prevented violence within their circle. Blood spilled here would curse both parties, so alphas used the space for negotiations too dangerous to conduct anywhere else. Adeline stood just outside the circle, hidden among the trees with Kira and a handful of Alex's elite guard. Alec had forbidden her from attending the actual parley. "Your presence would weaken my position," he'd said bluntly, but he'd allowed her to watch from concealment. Now she wished she'd stayed at the fortress. Brent stood in the stone circle, looking exactly as she remembered. Tall, handsome in a practiced way, his dark hair perfectly styled even after a day's hard travel. He wore his authority like a cloak, every gesture calculated to project strength and confidence. She'd loved him once, had reshaped her entire life around loving him. Looking at him now, she felt nothing but cold rage. Alec approached from the opposite side, alone as agreed. Where Brent looked polished and political, Alec was raw power barely contained. He moved like winter given form, and even from a distance, Adeline could see Brent's subtle flinch as the Ice King entered the circle. "Thorn," Alec said, his voice carrying clearly. "You're early. Time is precious when one's mate has been kidnapped by a rival alpha." Brent's tone was smooth, reasonable, the voice of a victim seeking justice. "Kidnapped." Alec's laugh was cold. "Interesting interpretation. I found her half dead in my forest, injured and alone. She hasn't mentioned being kidnapped. Because you're holding her against her will, using the relic to control her." Brent stepped forward, earnest now, playing to whatever audience he imagined. "Adeline is fragile, Alpha Vulov, easily influenced. The Fang's power has confused her, made her think she chose to run. But I know my mate. She would never leave willingly." The words made Adeline's blood boil. Fragile, easily influenced. 6 years of subtle belittlement compressed into 2 dismissive sentences. "Your mate," Alec said slowly, "stole your most valuable relic and threw herself into Bloodwater Gorge to escape you. That suggests she was highly motivated." "She's not well. The bond, it's been strained lately. My fault, perhaps. I've been focused on pack matters, neglecting her needs." Brent's expression turned pained, perfectly performed. "But I love her. I want her back, safe and whole. Whatever you want in exchange, territory, trade rights, political alliance, name your price. Just return Adeline and the Fang." Kira whispered beside Adeline. "He's good. Almost sounds sincere." "He's always good at lying," Adeline murmured back. In the circle, Alex seemed to consider the offer. "Generous. But you're assuming I have any interest in your southern politics. Then keep the territory concessions. I'll offer something better." Brent's voice dropped, became confidential. "There's a reason I've held the Fang for 5 years without using it. The relic is dangerous, Vulov. It corrupts slowly, whispering promises while it devours your sanity. My father tried to master it. He died screaming, consumed by power he couldn't control. And yet you kept it. Because destroying it risks worse consequences. But bound properly, controlled by someone strong enough." Brent smiled. "You have that strength. Take the Fang, study it, use it to strengthen your pack. I'll even provide the binding rituals my father developed. All I ask in return is Adeline." Adeline's breath caught. He was offering to trade her, his mate of 6 years, for political advantage and the return of a relic he couldn't use anyway, not even pretending she mattered beyond her utility. "And if I refuse?" Alec asked. "Then I invoke territorial right of recovery. Adeline is my bonded mate. The Fang was stolen from my personal collection. By pack law, I'm entitled to retrieve both by force if necessary." Brent's expression hardened. "I brought 20 warriors, Alpha Vulov. You might win a fight, but it would cost you. Dead wolves, damaged alliances, a war you don't need on the eve of winter. Is one confused she-wolf worth that price?" The challenge hung in the air between them. Kira's hand dropped to her weapon. "If he attacks the Alpha inside the border stones, The curse will kill him. Brent's not stupid enough to attack directly, Adeline said. He's applying pressure, seeing if Alec will fold. She held her breath, watching Alec's face for any sign of his decision. The Ice King stood silent for a long moment, letting the tension build. Then he smiled, an expression that made Brent take an involuntary step backward. Interesting offer, Alec said. There's just one problem. What's that? You're assuming Adeline wants to return to you. Brent's confident mask slipped. She's my mate. She doesn't get a choice. Actually, Alec's voice went arctic. She does. In my territory, under my protection, she has every choice, and I'm not inclined to return someone who clearly prefers drowning to being your mate. You're making a mistake, Vulov. That relic will destroy her. She's not strong enough. She survived Bloodwater Gorge, survived 3 days in the wilderness injured and hunted, stood in my training yard this morning against my second and earned respect from wolves who wanted her dead. Alec's eyes gleamed dangerous in the fading light. Your mate is stronger than you ever gave her credit for. She's mine. The civilized mask shattered completely. Brent's wolf showed in his eyes, possessive and furious. 6 years, Vulov. 6 years I invested in her, shaping her, building the alliance through her family. You can't just take her because you found her first. I'm not taking her. She chose to stay. She's confused. The relic chose her. Not you, despite 5 years of trying. Her. Alec's smile was all teeth. Must sting, knowing the power you couldn't master, answers to the mate you considered worthless. Brent's hands clenched into fists. For a moment, Adeline thought he might actually attack despite the curse. Then he visibly gathered himself, forced his features back into something resembling control. Fine, he said coldly. Keep her, but the fang belongs to my pack by right of inheritance. Return it or face the consequences. Come and take it. The words hung like a declaration of war. Brent's smile turned vicious. Gladly. 3 days, Vulov. I'll return with my full force. Let's see if your Ice King reputation is worth anything against real numbers. He turned and strode from the circle without waiting for dismissal. Kira swore softly. He's actually going to do it. He's going to war over a relic and wounded pride. Not just pride, Adeline said quietly, watching Brent disappear into the trees. Control. He can't stand that I chose someone else, that I dared to think I deserved better than what he offered. The mate bond twisted in her chest, recognizing Brent's departure, trying to pull her after him. She gritted her teeth against the pain and stayed exactly where she was. Alec approached their hiding spot. You heard? All of it. Adeline stepped out of concealment. He's going to bring his entire pack down on you because of me, because I couldn't just stay quiet and useful. Good. At her shocked look, Alec's expression turned cold and calculating. I've been waiting for an excuse to put Brent Thorne in his place for years. He's been expanding south, building alliances, positioning himself as the future power in the region. Better to break him now before he gets strong enough to be a real threat. You wanted this, Adeline realized. From the beginning. That's why you saved me, why you offered protection. You needed a justification for war. I saved you because leaving you to die would have been wasteful. I offered protection because the Fang clearly chose you for a reason, and I'm curious to see why. Alec moved closer, his winter eyes boring into hers. But yes, the coming conflict is convenient. Brent's overextended himself, maintaining 2 territories and courting the Eastern Alliance. His warriors are spread thin. If I strike now hard and fast, I can shatter his power base before winter. It was manipulation on a grand scale, and Adeline had walked right into it. She should feel used, angry, betrayed again. Instead, she felt oddly liberated. You're honest about it, at least, she said. Brent would have lied, made it about protection or honor or fate. You just admit you're using me. Everyone uses everyone. The only question is whether both parties benefit. Alec tilted his head. You get protection from your former mate and a chance to make him pay for 6 years of betrayal. I get justification to crush a rival and potentially access to the most powerful relic in the North. Seems fair. Put like that, it was fair. Transactional and cold, but fair. What happens after? Adeline asked. After the war. After Brent's defeated. What happens to me? That depends on what you become between now and then. Alex's expression was unreadable. The Fang chose you for a reason. Figure out why, learn to use its power properly, and you'll have options. Remain weak and dependent, and you'll just be trading one alpha's protection for another's. The brutal honesty should have stung. Instead, it crystallized something inside her. She didn't want to be protected, didn't want to be useful or decorative or dependent on anyone's mercy. She wanted to be strong enough that she didn't need protection at all. The Fang pulsed against her chest, warm and approving. Yes, it whispered. Finally. Train me, Adeline said. Really train me. Not just basic defense, everything. Combat, strategy, how to use the Fang's power without losing myself. Make me into someone Brent will regret underestimating. Something flickered in Alex's eyes. Respect, maybe, or recognition. It won't be easy. I don't coddle my warriors. Good. I've had enough coddling to last a lifetime. You'll train with Kira every morning, combat drills until you can hold your own against my elite guard. Afternoons, you study pack law, territorial politics, everything you'll need to understand the game you're playing. Evenings, he paused, seeming to make a decision. Evenings, you work with me to understand the Fang, what it wants, what it can do, what price it demands. 3 days until Brent returns, Kira interjected. That's not enough time to make her combat ready. No, Alec agreed. But it's enough time to make her dangerous. He extended his hand again, the same gesture from 3 days ago in the cabin. But this time, it wasn't just offering rescue, it was offering transformation. Adeline clasped his hand firmly. Power arced between them again, stronger than before. The Fang blazed hot against her chest, and for a moment she could have sworn she felt another presence. Ancient, vast, approving. When they broke contact, both were breathing harder. What is that? Kira demanded, staring at their hands. What just happened? I don't know, Alex said slowly. But we're going to find out. He turned back toward the fortress, already issuing orders, his mind clearly on the coming war. Kira followed, arguing about defensive positions and supply lines. Adeline stayed a moment longer at the border stones, looking south toward where Brent had disappeared. The mate bond still pulled at her, still hurt, but the pain felt distant now, like an old wound instead of a fresh one. She touched the Fang through her shirt, feeling its steady pulse. 3 days, she thought. 3 days to become someone he won't recognize. The Fang's response was wordless but clear. 3 days to become who you were always meant to be. Adeline smiled and followed Alec into the gathering darkness, leaving the border stones and her old life behind. Dawn came too early and brought Kira with it. Up, the second commanded, throwing open the door to Adeline's quarters without knocking. If you want to survive what's coming, we start now. Adeline rolled out of bed, every muscle screaming from yesterday's training. The Fang pulsed warm against her chest. It had taken to staying close even while she slept, as if afraid she might try to abandon it. Or perhaps it was afraid she'd be taken. How long until Brent arrives? Adeline asked, pulling on training clothes with movements that were becoming automatic. 2 days, maybe less if he forces a hard march. Kira tossed her a water skin. Drink. You'll need it. The training yard was already full despite the early hour. Word had spread that war was coming, and Alec's warriors were preparing with the grim efficiency of wolves who'd survived too many battles to take anything for granted. They watched Adeline with less hostility now. Kira's approval had bought her that much, but trust was still a distant goal. Today you learn to kill, Kira announced, leading her to a section of the yard set up with practice dummies. Not wound, not disable, kill, because Brent's wolves won't show mercy, and neither can you. For 3 hours, Kira drilled her relentlessly. Throat strikes, heart shots, the precise angle to break a spine. How to use an opponent's momentum against them. Where to hit to cripple instantly. The difference between a fight and an execution. You're thinking too much, Kira said after Adeline hesitated on a killing strike. In combat, hesitation gets you killed. Your wolf knows what to do. Trust her. My wolf spent 6 years being trained to submit, Adeline panted, resetting her stance. It's not that simple. Then untrain her, fast. Kira demonstrated the move again, her strike precise and brutal. Again, and this time commit. Pretend the dummy is Brent. Something dark unfurled in Adeline's chest. She struck, and the practice dummy's head snapped back with a crack that echoed across the yard. Kira's smile was fierce. Better. Again. By midday, Adeline's hands were bloody and shaking, but she could execute the killing sequences without thinking. Muscle memory was replacing hesitation, and the Fang's power made her faster, stronger, more dangerous than she had any right to be. That's enough combat drills, Alec's voice cut across the yard. He'd been watching from the balcony, she realized, observing her progress like a general evaluating troops. Adeline, with me. Time for the next lesson. Kira nodded approval and moved off to drill other warriors. Adeline followed Alec into the fortress, through corridors she was beginning to recognize, down into the deep places carved directly from mountain stone. They ended in a circular chamber lit by torches, ancient symbols carved into the walls. The air hummed with old magic, making her wolf pace nervously. "What is this place?" Adeline asked, her voice echoing strangely. "A binding room, built by the first packs to safely study dangerous relics." Alec gestured to the symbols. "The wards prevent magic from escaping. Whatever the Fang does in here, it stays contained." He moved to the center of the room and turned to face her. "Take out the relic." Adeline hesitated. They'd been alone together before, but never like this. Enclosed, isolated, with the explicit purpose of unleashing power she barely understood. "You want me to prove I'm not a threat to your pack," she said, "that I can control it. I want you to understand what you're carrying before Brent arrives and forces the issue." Alec's expression was unreadable. "The Fang has been dormant for generations. Now it's active, bonded to you, growing stronger every day. We need to know what it's capable of and what it might demand in return." The warning in his voice was clear. Power always had a price. Adeline drew the Fang from beneath her shirt. Immediately, the temperature dropped. Frost spread across the stone floor in crystalline patterns, and the torches flickered despite the still air. "Tell me what you feel," Alec commanded. "Cold, but not painful. It's like the cold is part of me now." She held the Fang up, watching how the torchlight played across ancient bone. And something else. A presence. Like it's aware. "The first Alpha's essence," Alec said quietly. "Trapped in bone, waiting. My people have legends about it, that the Fang contains not just power, but knowledge. The accumulated wisdom of the first werewolf, preserved through magic we've long forgotten." "Then why didn't it work for Brent or his father?" "Because they tried to dominate it, to force it to serve them." Alex circled her slowly, studying the frost patterns. "But you didn't try to control it, did you? You were just trying to survive." He was right. She'd never asked the Fang for power. It had simply given it, freely, in her moments of greatest need. "So what? I accidentally befriended an ancient magical relic?" Despite everything, Adeline laughed. "That seems absurd." "Most powerful things are absurd when you strip away the mythology." Alex stopped directly in front of her. "Now, let's see what it can actually do. Try to call the power deliberately, not in panic or self-defense. Choose to wield it." Adeline closed her eyes, focusing on the Fang's pulse. She reached inward toward that vast presence she'd felt in the river and whispered, "Help me." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Power flooded through her veins like liquid ice. Her eyes snapped open and she knew without checking that they'd turned the pale blue-white of ancient glaciers. Frost exploded outward from her feet, climbing the walls, coating everything in crystalline beauty. "Stop!" Alec's voice cut through the rush of power. "Control it. Don't let it consume you." But it felt so good. 6 years of being powerless, of making herself small and quiet, and now she held enough strength to level mountains. Why would she ever stop? "Because," the Fang's voice whispered, "uncontrolled power is just another form of slavery." The words shocked her enough to pull back. The frost stopped spreading, though it didn't retreat. Adeline opened her eyes. When had she closed them? And found Alec watching her with an expression caught between fascination and concern. "You lost yourself," he said. "For a moment, you weren't Adeline anymore, just a conduit for the Fang's power." "I'm fine," she insisted, but her hands were shaking. "Are you?" He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel his warmth against the cold radiating from her skin. Because from where I'm standing, you look like every other wolf who's tried to master the fang and failed. Seduced by strength, forgetting the price. What price? The question came out sharper than intended. That's what we're here to discover. Alec held out his hand. Try again. But this time let me anchor you. If you start to lose yourself, I'll pull you back. It was trust she hadn't earned and didn't deserve. But the alternative was attempting this alone and possibly becoming exactly what Brent had warned, a vessel for power that would eventually destroy her. Adeline placed her hand in his. The moment they touched, the power shifted. Still cold, still vast, but somehow balanced. Alec's presence acted like a counterweight, his own considerable strength grounding her when the fang's magic threatened to sweep her away. Again, Alec commanded. Call it. Controlled this time. She did. The power came more gently now, flowing through her rather than overwhelming her. With Alec's hand in hers, she could feel the edges of it, where her will ended and the fangs began. Could sense the ancient presence that lived in the bone, patient and purposeful. What do you want? She asked it silently. The answer came not in words, but in images. A wolf standing alone against darkness, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Strength in service rather than domination. You were never meant to be soft, the presence whispered, but you were always meant to be kind. The first alpha understood. True power is choosing when not to use it. Understanding crashed over her. The fang hadn't chosen her because she was strong or ambitious or naturally gifted. It had chosen her because she'd spent 6 years being broken and had still chosen mercy over vengeance. Had still chosen to save herself rather than drag Brent down with her. The power crystallized inside her, no longer wild but purposeful. When she opened her eyes this time, she felt perfectly clear. I understand now, she said quietly. Alec released her hand and the loss of contact was almost painful. What did it show you? Why it chose me. What it wants. She looked down at the fang, seeing it differently now. It's not a weapon, it's a test. Everyone who's tried to use it for domination has failed because that's not what it's for. Then what is it for? Protection, defense. The first alpha created it to defend the weak, not to conquer. She met Alec's eyes. That's why it answered me in the river. I wasn't trying to attack anyone. I was just trying to survive, to protect myself. Something shifted in Alec's expression. If that's true, it changes everything. Brent won't be able to use it even if he takes it from you. The fang will reject anyone who tries to wield it for conquest, which means he'll keep coming until he destroys it. He can't stand the idea of power he can't control. Adeline's hands clenched. We need to end this before he brings his entire pack down on you. We will, but first... Alec moved to one of the walls, pressing his hand against a specific symbol. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a small alcove containing a single object. A collar. Silver and ancient, inscribed with runes that hurt to look at. What is that? Adeline asked, though part of her already knew. A mate bond breaker. Rare, dangerous, and usually fatal to the wearer. Alec lifted it carefully. But you're not usual. The fang's power might let you survive the severing. Her heart hammered. Freedom from Brent, from the constant pull and pain of a bond that had only ever been a chain, but at potentially the cost of her life. Why show me this now? Because tomorrow night is the full moon. Mate bonds are strongest then, most resistant to breaking, but they're also most vulnerable. If you're going to try this, that's your window. Alec's eyes held hers. I won't force you. But if you face Brent while still bonded to him, that connection could be used against you. He could call you to him, force the bond to compel obedience. The strategic calculation was sound. But Adeline heard what Alec didn't say. This could kill you. Choose carefully. I'll think about it, she managed. They left the binding room in silence, the collar remaining behind, waiting. The next day passed in a blur of preparation. Alec's warriors fortified defensive positions while scouts reported Brent's progress. He was pushing hard, clearly angry, bringing not 20 but 40 warriors now. Other packs had joined him, alphas who saw a chance to humble the Ice King or simply feared what the Fang's awakening might mean. They're coming for war, Kira said grimly, studying the reports. Not retrieval. Brent's convinced them you're a threat. Adeline stood on the fortress walls watching the sun sink toward the horizon. In a few hours, the full moon would rise. In a day, maybe less, Brent would be at their gates. And she still hadn't decided about the collar. Hiding up here won't make the choice easier, Marcus said, appearing beside her. The young warrior who'd challenged her in the training yard now nodded respectfully. For what it's worth, you've earned your place in this pack. Most of us see that now. Most? There are always doubters, but they'll change their minds when you fight beside us. He glanced at her. You are going to fight, right? Not run when he gets here? I'm not running, Adeline said firmly. Marcus grinned. Good, because Kira's got money on you taking down at least 3 of Brent's wolves before he reaches the fortress. He left her alone with her thoughts and the approaching moonrise. When full dark fell and the moon began to climb, Adeline made her decision. She found Alec in his private study, reviewing battle plans by firelight. He looked up when she entered, and his eyes went immediately to her empty hands. You didn't bring the collar, he observed. I don't need it. At his questioning look, she continued. The bond is part of my past. Breaking it won't change what Brent did or who I was. I've been running from pain for so long, first by staying with him, now by wanting to cut him out completely. But maybe the answer isn't running at all. That's naive, Alex said bluntly. Pain doesn't make you stronger, it just hurts. Then let it hurt. But on my terms, not his. She moved closer to the fire. Besides, if he tries to use the bond to compel me, the Fang will protect me. It has so far. You're gambling your life on that assumption. Oh, I've been gambling my life since I stole the Fang and jumped off a cliff. At least now I'm betting on myself. She met his eyes. You said I needed to figure out what I was becoming. I think I'm becoming someone who doesn't need to erase the past to move forward. Someone who can carry the scars and still fight. Alex studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Your choice. But if that bond becomes a liability in battle, I won't hesitate to put you down. I wouldn't expect anything less. Good. He returned to his maps. Get some rest. Tomorrow, He stopped mid-sentence, his entire body going rigid. Through the window, Adeline heard it too. The howl of wolves approaching, dozens of them. Too many and too early. They're here, Alex said, already moving. Brent's attacking tonight instead of waiting for dawn. They ran for the walls. All around them, the fortress erupted into controlled chaos. Warriors taking positions, weapons being distributed, the organized panic of a pack preparing for siege. Adeline reached the battlements and looked out at the forest below. Moonlight painted everything silver, and in that cold light, she saw them. Wolves. Scores of them, surrounding the fortress, their eyes glowing in the darkness. And at their head, Brent stood in human form, wearing the armor of an alpha going to war. Alec Vulov. His voice carried easily over the distance. I gave you 3 days. You chose to keep what's mine. Now face the consequences. 40 wolves, Kira muttered beside them. Maybe 50. More than we thought. But Alec wasn't looking at Brent's forces. He was staring at something else. Movement in the trees beyond the immediate attackers. No, he said quietly. Not 50. Look. More wolves emerged from the forest, hundreds of them. Pack after pack, alphas and warriors all united under Brent's banner. The sheer number made Adeline's breath catch. The Eastern Alliance, she whispered. He called them early. This isn't just about me anymore. It never was. Alec's expression was carved from ice. He's using your theft as justification to unite against me. This is a power play. Take down the Ice King and divide my territory. Brent's voice rang out again. I'm offering one final chance. Return the Fang and my mate, and I'll withdraw. Refuse, and we'll take them by force, and your fortress will burn. The mate bond throbbed painfully in Adeline's chest, recognizing Brent's proximity, his anger, his demand. 6 years of conditioning screamed at her to obey, to go to him, to stop this before wolves died. But the Fang pulsed stronger, and Adeline's own rage burned hotter than any bond. She stepped forward before Alec could stop her, her voice carrying with a power that surprised even her. I'm not your mate anymore, Brent. I'm not your possession or your political token. You want the Fang? Come take it. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Brent laughed, the sound sharp with fury. So be it. I offered mercy. Now you get war. He shifted, his body flowing into wolf form, and behind him hundreds of wolves howled as one. The siege began. Brent's forces hit the fortress like a tidal wave. The first line crashed against Alec's defensive positions, and the night erupted into snarls and blood. Adeline watched from the walls as trained warriors fought with desperate precision, holding ground against impossible odds. "We can't win this by defending," Alec said, his voice cold and calm. "There are too many. We need to break their leadership, cut off the head." "You want to go after Brent directly," Adeline realized. "If he falls, the alliance fractures. The Eastern Pacts are here for opportunity, not loyalty. Take away their figurehead, and they'll retreat." Alec turned to Kira. "Can you hold the fortress?" "We'll hold or die trying, but you'll need to reach him first, and he's got his elite guard around him." Kira's eyes cut to Adeline. "Unless you have another way through." They both looked at her. "The bond," Adeline said slowly. "He can sense me through it. If I go down there, he'll come for me himself. It'll draw him out." "That's insane," Kira protested. "You'll be torn apart." "Not if the Fang protects me, and not if Alec uses the distraction to get close." Adeline's hands were shaking, but her voice stayed steady. "It's the only way to end this without losing everyone." Alec grabbed her arm. "You understand what you're suggesting? You'll be bait, exposed. If the Fang's power fails even for a second, then I die. But at least I die fighting instead of hiding while your wolves pay for my choices." She met his eyes. "You said I needed to prove I belong to this pack. Let me prove it." For a heartbeat, she thought he'd refuse. Then his grip tightened, and she felt something pass between them. Not quite trust, but acknowledgement. Recognition of someone willing to sacrifice for something greater than themselves. "If you do this," Alex said quietly, "you can't hesitate. The moment you're out there, you're committed. Brent will come for you with everything he has." "I know. And I won't be able to protect you until I reach him. I don't need protection. I need you to end this." She pulled the fang from beneath her armor, feeling its power pulse against her palm. "I'll give you the opening. Don't waste it." Alec released her arm and nodded once, sharp and final. Then he turned to his warriors, issuing rapid orders, preparing for the most dangerous gambit of the battle. Adeline walked to the fortress gate. Warriors stared as she approached, understanding what she was about to do spreading through their ranks. Marcus stepped forward, offering his sword wordlessly. She took it, the weight foreign but somehow right in her hand. "For what it's worth," he said, "you're braver than any southern wolf I've ever met." "Or more stupid." Sometimes they're the same thing." He clasped her shoulder briefly. "Don't die out there." "I'll try my best." The gate opened with a groan of metal and wood. Beyond it, the battle raged, wolves tearing at each other, blood-staining snow, the primal chaos of war. Adeline stepped through. The moment she crossed the threshold, dozens of eyes locked onto her. She felt Brent's awareness spike through the mate bond, felt his shock and rage as he realized she'd actually come out to face him. "Adeline!" His roar cut through the battle. "Come here, now!" The bond flared, trying to compel her legs to move toward him. 6 years of conditioning added their weight to the command. But the fang burned ice cold against her chest, and Adeline's will was no longer something that could be commanded. "If you want me," she shouted back, "come get me yourself. Or are you too afraid to face the mate you considered worthless?" The insult hit home. Brent's wolf form blurred as he shifted back to human, his face twisted with fury. "You dare! I dare everything now. You made me small and afraid, and I let you because I thought the bond meant something. But it was always just a chain." She raised the fang high. "And I'm done being chained." Power exploded from the relic. Frost erupted outward in a wave, flash freezing everything in a 20-foot radius. Attacking wolves yelped and retreated, their paws slipping on sudden ice. For a moment, the battle paused, everyone staring at the southern she-wolf, who'd just demonstrated power that rivaled an alpha. Brent's expression shifted from rage to something more dangerous, calculation. "So that's it. The Fang really does answer to you." He began walking toward her, his elite guard falling into formation around him. "All this time, I thought it was luck. Coincidence. But you've actually bonded with it. It chose me because I'm nothing like you. You're right about that. You're weak, emotional, incapable of making the hard choices." He kept advancing, and his wolves advanced with him, slowly surrounding her. But the Fang doesn't care about weakness. It only knows power, and power belongs to those strong enough to claim it. Too late, Adeline realized the trap. She'd drawn Brent out, yes, but she'd also isolated herself. Alec was still fighting his way through the press of bodies, too far to help. She was alone with her former mate and 20 elite warriors, all of them ready to kill. The Fang pulsed a warning, but Adeline was already moving. She called its power deliberately this time, feeling frost gather around her hands, her feet, turning her into something between wolf and winter storm. Brent's guard attacked as one. She met them with everything the Fang had taught her. Ice spears erupted from the ground, impaling wolves mid-leap. Frost spread from her touch, freezing blood in veins. She moved faster than should be possible, the Fang's ancient power making her a blur of motion and cold fury. But there were too many. A claw raked across her ribs, teeth found her shoulder. She killed 2 wolves and injured 3 more, but the others kept coming, wearing her down through sheer numbers. Through the chaos, she saw Brent watching, waiting for the exact moment when her strength failed. "Not yet," she begged the Fang. "Just a little longer. Just until Alec—" But the Fang's power had limits, and she'd reached them. The frost faltered. Her movement slowed. A massive gray wolf hit her from the side, driving her to the ground. Brent shifted back to human form and walked through his warriors to stand over her. In his hand, he held silver chains inscribed with binding runes, prepared specifically to contain the Fang's magic. "Did you really think you could challenge me?" He crouched beside her, close enough that she could smell his familiar scent, feel the mate bond singing between them. 6 years, Adeline. 6 years I molded you into something useful. And this is how you repay me? Embarrassing me in front of every alpha in the region? You embarrassed yourself, she gasped through pain, by being exactly what you are, small, cruel, terrified that anyone might see through your act. His hand lashed out, striking her across the face. I could have made you great, could have raised you up as my Luna, given you respect and power. But you threw it away for pride. I threw it away for freedom. There is no freedom. Brent grabbed her hair, forcing her to look at him. There's only power and those who serve it. You could have served at my side. Instead, you'll serve as an example. He reached for the fang. The moment his fingers touched it, the relic's reaction was instantaneous and violent. Power exploded outward, not ice this time, but something worse, pure, condensed agony. Brent screamed and jerked back, his hand blackened and smoking. It won't let you take it, Adeline said, tasting blood. Told you, it doesn't answer to dominance. Fury and pain twisted Brent's features into something monstrous. Then I'll rip it from your corpse. He shifted, his wolf form massive and terrible, jaws opening to tear out her throat, and froze. A hand had appeared, gripping Brent's neck, holding him suspended mid-attack. Behind him, ice-blue eyes blazed with cold fire. Alec had arrived. You made a mistake, Thorn, the Ice King said, his voice arctic. You brought war to my territory, threatened my wolves, tried to kill someone under my protection. He threw Brent 20 feet, the motion effortless despite the other alpha's size. Now, Alec continued, his own shift beginning, power radiating from him in waves that made even his allies step back. Let me show you what that costs. The two alphas collided in an explosion of fur and fury, and the battle's entire momentum shifted. Adeline dragged herself upright, watching through blood and pain as Alec and Brent tore into each other. Around them, wolves stopped fighting to witness the clash of their leaders, because this was what it had always been about. Not her, not the Fang. Two alphas fighting for dominance, and she'd just been the excuse. The Fang pulsed weakly. She'd pushed it too hard, asked too much. But it had one more gift to give. Stand, it whispered. This isn't over. Look. She followed its guidance and saw what Alec had positioned her to see. Brent second in command, circling the alpha fight with a silver dagger, waiting for the perfect moment to strike Alec from behind. Treachery, cowardice, exactly what she'd expect from Brent's inner circle. No one else had noticed. They were all watching the main fight. In seconds, that dagger would find Alec's back and everything would be lost. Adeline had maybe one burst of power left, enough to warn Alec or enough to act herself. She chose to act. Drawing on the very last reserves of the Fang's strength, she launched herself across the space between them. The second-in-command saw her coming and turned, dagger rising, but she was already inside his guard. They went down together in a tangle of limbs. She felt the silver blade score across her ribs, burning with the poison meant for Alec. But her own strike, pure instinct guided by Kira's brutal training, found its mark. The second-in-command's eyes went wide. He looked down at her hand buried in his chest, at the frost spreading from her touch, freezing his heart. He was dead before he hit the ground. Adeline collapsed beside him, the Fang's power finally exhausted. Through dimming vision, she saw Alec's massive wolf form tear out Brent's throat, saw the former Alpha fall, saw the Eastern Alliance wolves break and run as their leader's blood stained the snow. Victory. They'd won. The last thing she felt before darkness claimed her was strong arms lifting her, a voice calling her name, and the strange warmth of knowing she'd finally proven, to everyone, including herself, that she was worth saving. Pain dragged Adeline back to consciousness. Not the sharp agony of battle wounds, but a deeper ache, silver poisoning burning through her veins from where the dagger had cut her. Her wolf whimpered, too weak to heal, too damaged to fight the toxin spreading through her system. "Stay still," Alec's voice cut through the fog. "The healer's almost done." She forced her eyes open. She was back in the fortress, in what she recognized as the medical wing. Dawn light filtered through high windows, painting everything in shades of gray and gold. How long had she been unconscious? An elderly woman bent over Adeline's ribs, her hands glowing with soft green light as she drew the silver from her wounds. A healer, rare among wolf packs, their magic more art than science, passed down through bloodlines. "The poison went deep," the healer said without looking up. "Another hour, and it would have reached her heart. She's lucky the Fang kept her alive this long." Alex stood by the window, still wearing his battle-stained clothes, dried blood matting his hair. He looked exhausted and somehow more real than she'd ever seen him. No longer the Ice King, just a man who'd fought through the night and won at terrible cost. "How many did we lose?" Adeline asked, her voice rough. 14 dead, 23 injured. Each word landed like a stone. "Could have been worse. Would have been, if you hadn't taken down Brent second. That dagger was meant for me." "I know." "Why?" He turned from the window, those winter eyes searching her face. "You could barely stand. Using the Fang's power one more time might have killed you. Why risk it?" Because watching him die after he'd given her a chance at freedom would have been worse than any wound. Because somewhere in the past days, she'd started to see him not as a means of survival, but as someone worth protecting. Because the thought of this pack, his pack, losing their alpha made her chest ache in ways that had nothing to do with injuries. "Strategic value," she said instead. "Can't win a war if the general falls." Alex's mouth quirked, almost a smile. "Tactical thinking. Kira would approve." The healer finished her work and stepped back, wiping sweat from her forehead. "She'll live, but she needs rest. Days of it, not hours. That silver did significant damage, and the Fang's power is completely depleted. She won't be able to call on it for at least a week." "Understood." Alec moved closer to the bed. "Thank you, Elena. Check on the other wounded and report back." The healer bowed and left, closing the door behind her. Alone now, the silence stretched between them. Adeline became acutely aware of how vulnerable she was, injured, powerless, completely at his mercy. If Alec decided she was more trouble than she was worth, this would be the moment. "Brent's dead," he said finally. "I made sure of it. No chance of resurrection, no mysterious survival. His body burned with the others at dawn. The mate bond had gone silent, not broken. She could still feel a faint echo of where it had been, but dormant, waiting to fade completely now that the other half was gone." "Good," Adeline said, and meant it. No grief, no regret, just relief that the chapter was finally, definitively closed. The Eastern Alliance scattered after he fell. Most fled south. A few asked to join my pack. Alec's expression was unreadable. "Your former pack is in chaos. No clear heir. Their alpha dead. Their most powerful relic gone. They'll tear themselves apart fighting over succession. 6 years of her life reduced to political aftermath. Wolves she'd known, lived with, served, now just pieces in someone else's game of power." "Do you feel anything?" Alec asked. For them? Did she? Adeline searched her heart and found only a distant pity. They'd watched her suffer and done nothing, had participated in her humiliation or simply looked away. Why should she grieve for people who'd never valued her beyond her utility? No, she said honestly. Is that wrong? It's practical. They made their choices. You made yours. He pulled a chair close to the bed and sat, bringing them to eye level. Now you need to make another one. Her pulse quickened. What do you mean? You're healed enough to travel in a few days. The fang is yours by right of claiming. No one here will dispute that. You're free to leave. Go anywhere, start over, be whoever you want without the weight of pack politics. He paused. Or you can stay. The offer hung in the air between them, loaded with implications neither of them was ready to name. Stay as what? Adeline asked carefully. A guest, a refugee under protection? As pack. Alex's gaze was steady, serious. You fought for us, bled for us, killed for us. That's not obligation or debt, that's choice. My wolves saw it. They're talking about you in the halls, arguing over who gets to train with you when you're recovered. Even Marcus admits you've got more spine than most warriors twice your size. Something warm unfurled in her chest. Acceptance. Recognition. The thing she'd craved from Brent's pack and never received, offered now by wolves who'd had every reason to reject her. And what do you think? The question was more vulnerable than she'd intended. Do you want me to stay? Alec was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he reached out and took her hand. The same gesture from the border stones, from the binding room, but different now. Deliberate. I think, he said slowly, that I've spent 15 years building a pack based on strength and survival. Cold efficiency over warmth, power over connection. It's kept us alive, made us feared, but it's also made us, he searched for the word, isolated. Alone, even when surrounded by others. His thumb traced across her knuckles, a surprisingly gentle gesture from hands that had killed mere hours ago. Then you showed up, broken and desperate and completely out of your depth. And instead of staying broken, you chose to grow teeth, to fight back, to protect wolves who weren't even yours yet. His winter eyes met hers. You reminded me that strength without purpose is just violence, that survival without connection is just existence. The raw honesty stole her breath. This was the Ice King stripped of his armor, offering her something more precious than protection or power, understanding, recognition of someone who'd been as isolated as she had, just in different ways. I want you to stay, Alex said quietly, because you make this pack better. You make me better. But only if that's what you want. Not because you're afraid of being alone, or because you feel you owe me. Stay because you choose to. Adeline thought of the past week. Brutal training, hostile stares that became respect. The moment Kira had smiled after their first real fight. Thought of Marcus offering his sword. Of Elena the healer working through the night to save her. Of warriors she barely knew defending her right to stay. Thought of Alec, who'd been honest when honesty was cruel, who'd challenged her instead of coddling her, who'd seen her at her weakest and still offered her strength. This wasn't love, not yet, maybe not ever. But it was real, solid. A foundation she could build on instead of quicksand that would swallow her whole. I'll stay, she said. Not as a guest or a project, as pack. Alec's smile was brief but genuine. Good. Because Kira's already planned your training schedule for the next month, and she'll be insufferable if you leave before she's done with you. Only a month? She's optimistic. He stood, releasing her hand. Rest now. We'll formalize your pack status when you're healed. Until then, he gestured to the door, where she now noticed 2 warriors standing guard. You're under protection. What's left of Brent's loyalists might try something stupid. They'd have to get through your entire fortress. They would. But I prefer not to take chances with wolves who've proven themselves willing to die for this pack. He moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. The Fang, when its power returns, will need to train you properly. What you did in battle was impressive but reckless, uncontrolled. If you're going to wield that kind of strength, you need to master it completely. So I don't lose myself to it. So you don't have to rely on it. Alec's expression was serious. The Fang chose you, but you're not the Fang. Your worth isn't tied to ancient power or magical relics. The sooner you internalize that, the stronger you'll be. He left before she could respond, the door closing quietly behind him. Adeline lay back against the pillows, exhaustion pulling at her despite the hours she'd apparently already slept. The fang rested cool and quiet against her chest, its presence familiar now, comforting. "He's right," the ancient voice whispered. "You were strong before you found me. I just helped you remember." Sleep claimed her again, but this time her dreams were peaceful. No drowning, no running, just the quiet satisfaction of battles won and choices made. 3 days passed in a blur of healing and watching the pack recover from battle. Adeline spent most of her time in the medical wing, partly because Elena insisted, and partly because it gave her a window into pack dynamics she'd never seen before. Warriors came through, with injuries ranging from minor cuts to missing limbs, and she watched how they cared for each other, gruff but genuine, the kind of loyalty that came from surviving impossible odds together. On the 4th day, Kira appeared with training clothes and a dangerous smile. "Healer says you're cleared for light exercise," the second announced. "My definition of light might differ from hers, but that's a problem for later. Get dressed." "I can barely walk without my ribs screaming," Adeline protested, but she was already reaching for the clothes. "Then you'll learn to fight through pain, essential skill." Kira waited while Adeline changed, her expression approving when Adeline managed not to wince too obviously. "Better. The pack's gathering in the main hall tonight. You need to look like a warrior, not an invalid." "Gathering for what?" "Your formal acceptance. Every wolf who fought in the battle gets to witness and approve new pack members. It's tradition." Kira's smile turned sharp. "Usually just a formality, but in your case, there might be some discussion," which meant opposition. Wolves who still saw her as Brent's former mate, as the southern wolf who'd brought war to their door, as someone who didn't belong. "How much discussion?" Adeline asked. "Enough that you should be prepared to defend your place. Words, preferably. Violence, if necessary." Kira shrugged. "We're a practical pack. You want in? Prove you deserve it." They spent the afternoon in the training yard, and Adeline learned that Kira's definition of light exercise involved combat drills that left her gasping and her injuries screaming. But she also learned that 3 days of healing had left her stronger than before. The silver poisoning burned away, her wolf finally able to channel strength without the fang's interference. She was still nowhere near Kira's level, but she could hold her own for a few exchanges now. Could read attacks, counterstrikes, move with purpose instead of panic. "You're thinking like a warrior, finally," Kira said, after Adeline successfully blocked a combination that would have floored her a week ago. "Took you long enough. I had a good teacher. You had a ruthless teacher who enjoys watching people struggle." Kira's grin was fierce. "There's a difference. Now, one more round, then you need to prepare for tonight. And Adeline? Yeah? Some of the wolves who'll challenge you tonight fought beside Brent before his ambition brought them north. They'll test you hard, not because they hate you, but because they need to know you're not like him. That you're pack, not politician." "What do I say to that?" "The truth. It's the only thing that works with warriors." Kira raised her hands, ready for another bout. "Now, come at me like you mean it." Sunset painted the sky crimson and gold as Adeline made her way to the main hall. She'd dressed carefully in the clothes Kira had provided, practical leather and fur, warrior's garb, nothing decorative or soft. Her hair was pulled back in the severe braid Kira had taught her, her injuries hidden beneath layers. The fang hung around her neck on a leather cord, visible and undeniable. If they were going to judge her, let them judge all of her. The main hall was packed. Every wolf who could walk had gathered, forming a loose circle around the central fire. Alex stood at the head, Marcus and Kira flanking him, the picture of alpha authority. When Adeline entered, conversation died. Dozens of eyes tracked her progress as she walked to the circle's center, facing Alec across the flames. "Adeline," Alec's voice carried to every corner of the hall, formal now, nothing like their private conversations. "You've petitioned to join the Frostclaw Pack. Before the assembled warriors who defended this fortress, state your case." This was it, the moment that would define whether she'd truly escaped Brent's shadow or would always be marked by it. Adeline took a breath and began. "I came here as a refugee. Broken, desperate, running from a mate who'd used me for 6 years and planned to discard me when I'd outlived my usefulness. Her voice stayed steady, carrying. I stole from him, yes. Committed theft and fled. By rights, I should have died in Bloodwater Gorge. But I didn't. The Fang chose me for reasons I'm still learning to understand. She pulled the relic from beneath her shirt, letting firelight play across ancient bone. Alpha Vulov offered me shelter when he could have returned me to Brent. Offered training when he could have kept me locked away. Offered me a chance to become something more than what I'd been shaped into. And when Brent came for war, I fought. Not because I had to, because I chose to. Because this pack gave me something worth protecting. Movement in the crowd. A large male warrior stepped forward, one she recognized from the battle, his face scarred, his stance radiating challenge. Pretty words, he said, but words don't prove loyalty. You brought war to our door. 14 wolves died because you couldn't handle your pack politics quietly. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. Adeline's heart hammered, but she held her ground. You're right, she said, surprising him. My choices brought Brent here. That blood is on my hands, and I'll carry that weight. But Brent would have come eventually anyway. He was building an alliance to challenge Alpha Vulov's territory. I was just his excuse. Convenient justification, another voice called. Easy to claim you're not responsible. I didn't claim that. I said I'll carry the weight. There's a difference. Adeline met the scarred warrior's eyes. I can't bring back the dead. Can't erase what happened. But I can stand beside you in the next fight. Can bleed for this pack the way I did in the last battle. Can be a wolf you trust to watch your back instead of running when things get hard. Trust has to be earned, the warrior said, especially from Southerners who bring trouble. Then test me. The words came out before she could think them through, pure instinct backed by Kira's brutal training. Right here, right now. You want to know if I'm pack material? Fight me for it. The hall went silent. Even Alec looked surprised. The scarred warrior's expression shifted, became considering. You're injured, still healing from silver poisoning, hardly a fair fight. Life isn't fair. You think the next enemy will wait for me to be at full strength? Adeline pulled off her outer layer, exposing the bandages around her ribs. I'm not asking for easy. I'm asking for a chance to prove I belong. Kira was grinning from her spot beside Alec. Marcus looked torn between concern and admiration. Alec's face remained neutral, but she caught the slight nod, permission, or perhaps approval. The scarred warrior moved to the circle's center. Your funeral, Southern Wolf. Don't expect me to hold back. Wouldn't respect you if you did. They circled each other, the watching pack silent and intent. This was more than a fight. It was a test of everything she'd learned, everything she'd become in the week since throwing herself into the gorge. The warrior attacked first, a straight assault designed to overwhelm through sheer power. Adeline dodged, her injured ribs screaming protest, but Kira's training held. She read his follow-up, blocked the strike, countered with her own attack that he barely deflected. They exchanged blows for what felt like hours. Every hit Adeline took sent pain lancing through her injuries, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop. This was about more than acceptance. It was about proving to herself that she could stand toe-to-toe with warriors who'd spent lifetimes training. The Fang stayed dormant, its powers still recovering. This fight was all her, skill, determination, and the desperate need to belong somewhere. Finally, the warrior's fist connected with her ribs, exactly where the silver had cut deepest. Agony exploded through her chest. She dropped to one knee, gasping, vision graying. The warrior stepped back, breathing hard. Stay down. You've proven you've got courage. No shame in yielding. Adeline looked up at him through pain and sweat. I didn't come this far to yield. Using her last reserves of strength, she launched herself forward. The warrior, expecting her to stay down, was fractionally slow. She got inside his guard, struck hard and fast at the pressure points Kira had drilled into her, and swept his legs. He went down. Adeline followed, putting him in a submission hold that would have been impossible a week ago. Yield, she gasped. For a heartbeat, she thought he'd break free through sheer strength. Then his hand tapped the ground 3 times. I yield. The hall erupted. Warriors cheered, stamping their feet in approval. Even those who'd looked skeptical were shouting now, caught up in the moment. Adeline released the warrior and collapsed beside him, her ribs on fire, her entire body shaking. The scarred warrior sat up, rubbing his shoulder where her hold had nearly dislocated it, and started laughing. "You fight dirty, Southern wolf." "Learned from the best," Adeline managed through pain. He stood and offered his hand. She took it, letting him pull her upright despite her injuries. "Welcome to the pack," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Anyone who can fight through silver poisoning and still put me on my ass has earned their place." The cheers intensified. Wolves she'd never spoken to approached, offering respect, sharing names. Marcus appeared with a drink, Kira with bandages and a grin that suggested she'd won several bets. Alec remained by the fire, watching it all unfold. When their eyes met across the chaos, his smile was small but genuine. Pride, she realized. Not for himself, but for her. The celebration lasted well into the night. Warriors shared stories of the battle, embellishing details, turning terror into legend the way wolves always did. Adeline found herself at the center of several tales. The southern she-wolf who'd faced down her former mate, who'd saved the alpha with her last burst of power, who'd somehow convinced the first alpha's fang to choose her. They made her sound braver than she'd been, stronger, more certain. But maybe that was the point. Maybe legends weren't about truth, but about giving people something to aspire to. "You're thinking too hard," Kira said, appearing beside her with fresh drinks. "Just enjoy the win. You earned it." "Did I? Or did I just get lucky?" "Luck is what you make of it. You could have stayed down when the silver hit, could have yielded in the circle, could have run any of the dozen times things got hard." Kira clinked their cups together. "Instead, you grew teeth. That's not luck. That's choice." Before Adeline could respond, Elena the healer appeared, looking disapproving. "You reopened 3 wounds and probably set your recovery back a week. Was it worth it?" Adeline looked around the hall, at warriors who'd accepted her, at the place she'd earned through blood and determination, at the pack that was slowly becoming home. "Yes," she said simply. Elena sighed but didn't argue, just handed her a vial of something that smelled terrible. "Drink this. It'll help with the pain and speed healing. And next time you want to prove yourself, maybe choose an opponent who wasn't the fortress's heavyweight champion." "Where's the fun in that?" "Youth," Elena muttered, but her eyes were warm. "Impossible, the lot of you." As the night wore on and warriors gradually drifted to their quarters, Adeline found herself alone by the dying fire. Her ribs ached. Her entire body felt like one massive bruise, but underneath the pain was something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. "You should be resting," Alec's voice came from behind her. "Elena will have both our heads if those wounds get infected." "Can't sleep yet. Too much adrenaline." Adeline shifted to make room as he sat beside her. "Thank you. For tonight. For all of it." "You earned it yourself. I just provided the arena." He stared into the flames, his profile sharp in the firelight. "Though I'll admit, challenging Gareth to single combat was either brilliantly strategic or completely insane. Can it be both?" "With you, it usually is." There was warmth in his voice now, the ice thawed. "You've changed since you arrived. Stronger, yes, but also more yourself. Less shaped by what others needed you to be." "I had good teachers, and no choice but to change." Adeline touched the fang through her shirt, though I'm still figuring out who myself actually is. "You've got time." Alec's hand found hers, the touch sending warmth through her despite the cold. "That's the advantage of surviving. You get to keep discovering." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn down to embers. Outside, winter wind howled around the fortress, but inside, Adeline felt warm and safe and, for the first time in longer than she could remember, genuinely hopeful about the future. The fang pulsed once against her chest, a gentle reminder of its presence. But it wasn't demanding, wasn't controlling, just there. A tool she could use, a power she could call on, but not what defined her. She'd come to this fortress broken and desperate, running from a life that had never fit. She'd found something she never expected, not just shelter, but purpose. Not just survival, but belonging. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, learning to fully master the fang, continuing her training, navigating pack politics as a newly accepted member. understanding the strange connection between her and Alec that went beyond gratitude or strategy. But tonight, she simply existed in the moment, pain and peace, exhaustion and triumph. The complicated, beautiful mess of being alive and free. "I'm glad I jumped," Adeline said quietly. Alec's fingers tightened around hers. "So am I." In the dying firelight, surrounded by sleeping warriors and watched over by the ancient fortress, Adeline allowed herself to believe that maybe, finally, she'd found where she was meant to be. The mate bond's last echo faded completely, severed by Brent's death and her own transformation. Where it had been, new connections were forming, pack bonds, loyalty earned and given freely, the foundation of something that felt infinitely stronger than anything forced by biology. She was no longer Brent's mate, no longer defined by his rejection. She was pack. She was warrior. She was Adeline, forged in blood and ice and determination, and that was more than enough. Winter deepened over the following weeks, transforming the fortress into something out of legend, ice coating every surface, snow piled in drifts that reached the second-story windows, the kind of cold that tested even the hardiest northern wolves. Adeline had never loved winter more. She stood on the training grounds at dawn, breath misting in the frozen air, watching Kira demonstrate a new combat sequence. Her ribs had healed completely now, the Silver's poison purged from her system, leaving her stronger than before. The Fang's power had returned gradually, like a river thawing after winter, and with Alec's guidance, she was learning to wield it with precision rather than desperation. "You're distracted," Kira observed, interrupting her strike mid-flow. "Something on your mind?" "The Eastern delegates arrived today," Adeline said, "former allies of Brent's pack, coming to negotiate with Alec." "Ah, wondering if they'll recognize you?" Kira's smile was sharp. "They will. Question is whether they'll respect what you've become or try to use your past against the Alpha." That was exactly what worried her. 3 weeks since the battle, and word had spread across the territories. The Ice King had killed Brent Thorne and taken in his former mate. Some called it strategic brilliance. Others whispered about weakness, about Alec being manipulated by a southern she-wolf with stolen power. "Let them try," Adeline said, forcing confidence she didn't entirely feel. "I'm not the wolf they remember." "No, you're not." Kira resumed the sequence, her movements fluid and lethal. "But they'll test you anyway. Pack leaders always do. They need to see if you're genuinely pack or just playing at it." The delegates arrived at noon with an escort of 20 warriors and enough ceremony to announce their importance. Adeline watched from the battlements as they approached. 3 alphas from the Eastern Alliance, their banners snapping in the wind, their faces carefully neutral. She recognized one immediately. Alpha Garrett, who'd visited Brent's territory countless times, who'd smiled at her over dinner while discussing territorial expansion, who'd known about Brent's betrayal and said nothing. Her wolf growled low in her chest. "Easy," Alec murmured beside her. He'd appeared silently, the way he often did, his presence both steadying and electrifying. Save the aggression for when it's useful. He knew. About Brent and Lissa. About everything. Her hands clenched on the stone parapet. "He sat at our table, accepted our hospitality, and never said a word." Politics. Alec's voice was cold. Alphas protect their interests, not other wolves' mates. Garrett saw an opportunity in Brent's ambition and took it. Your suffering was irrelevant to his calculations. The brutal honesty stung, but it was also liberating. No pretense that pack leaders operated on honor or morality, just power and advantage. "So what's his play now?" Adeline asked. "Why come here?" "To assess whether I'm a threat or an opportunity. To see if Brent's death creates an opening they can exploit." Alec's eyes tracked the delegate's progress. "And to determine what you are, liability or asset. What do you want me to be?" He looked at her then, really looked, and something passed between them that had been building for weeks. Not the mate bond's artificial pull, but something earned through shared battles and honest words and the slow recognition of equals. "Yourself," Alec said simply, "whatever that means. I trust you to handle it." The word settled into her chest, warm and solid. Trust. From an alpha who didn't give it easily, who'd built his reputation on cold calculation and strategic distance. "Then let's show them what that looks like," Adeline said. The formal reception took place in the Great Hall, with Alex seated at the head table flanked by Kira and Marcus. Adeline stood among the elite guard, her new position earned through combat and acceptance, wearing warrior's leather and the fang displayed openly. Alpha Garrett's eyes found her immediately, and she watched recognition flash across his face, followed by carefully concealed shock. He'd expected to find Brent's timid mate cowering in a corner, perhaps, or locked away as a political prisoner, not standing armed among Alex's most trusted warriors. Alpha Vulov, Garrett began after the ritual greetings, his voice smooth and practiced. We come seeking clarity. Brent Thorne's death has created complications in the region. His pack fractures daily, his alliances dissolve, and rumors spread faster than we can contain them. Rumors about what? Alex's tone was neutral, giving nothing away. About you harboring his murderer. About stolen relics and broken mate bonds. About a southern she-wolf wielding power that should belong to the rightful Alpha line. Garrett's gaze cut to Adeline. Some say you've been bewitched. Others claim you're building an army to conquer the South. And what do you say? Alec asked. I say I'd like to hear the truth from the source. Garrett turned fully to face Adeline. Hello, Adeline. It's been some time. Every eye in the hall fixed on her. This was the test Kira had warned about. How she responded would define how the Eastern Alphas saw Alec's pack. Weak, and they'd sense vulnerability. Too aggressive, and they'd claim she was the manipulator Brent had warned about. She needed to be exactly herself, no more, no less. Alpha Garrett, Adeline said, her voice carrying clearly. You're right, it has been some time. The last I saw you, you were toasting Brent's health and praising his leadership. How are his widow and children managing? The barb landed, Garrett's jaw tightened fractionally. Lissa has taken temporary leadership until a proper successor is chosen. The children are well cared for. I'm sure they are. Lissa was always ambitious enough to land on her feet. Adeline stepped forward, aware of Alec watching, of Kira's slight nod of approval. But you didn't travel through winter storms to discuss Brent's family. You want to know if I murdered him. Did you? No. Alpha Vulov killed him in single combat after Brent brought 40 warriors to attack this fortress. I was there, but the killing blow was Alec's, witnessed by hundreds. She met Garrett's eyes steadily. As for stolen relics, the Fang chose me. It rejected Brent when he tried to force it to his will. If you doubt that, you're welcome to try taking it yourself. See how well that works. Silence. Then one of the other Eastern Alphas, a female with iron-gray hair, laughed. She's got spine now, the Alpha said. I remember you from the summer gatherings, Adeline. Quiet thing, always in Brent's shadow. This is quite the transformation. Nearly dying will do that, Adeline replied. Clarifies what matters and what doesn't. And what matters to you now? Garrett asked, his tone sharpening. Your former pack crumbles while you stand in luxury with their greatest enemy. Some might call that betrayal. The accusation hung in the air, dangerous and loaded. Adeline felt her wolf stir, felt the fang pulse against her chest, felt the weight of judgment from multiple alphas. But she also felt Alec's steady presence, Kira's silent support, the pack bonds that had become stronger than any biological connection. My former pack watched me suffer for 6 years and did nothing, Adeline said, her voice hardening. They participated in my humiliation or looked away because it was convenient, because I was just Brent's mate, just a political tool, not worth defending. She pulled the fang from beneath her shirt, letting it catch the firelight. When I finally found the strength to save myself, they hunted me, tried to kill me, called me thief and traitor for refusing to stay broken. She took another step forward, and Garrett actually leaned back. So you want to talk about betrayal, Alpha Garrett? Let's talk about how you sat at Brent's table knowing he was planning to discard me. How you smiled and made deals while I was being erased piece by piece. How none of you, not one, thought to question whether the mate bond you all praised so highly was actually destroying someone. Her voice rose, carrying to every corner of the hall. I don't owe that pack loyalty. I don't owe them grief. I owe them nothing but the memory of what I survived, and I'll carry that with me so I never forget what it means to be powerless. The silence was absolute. Then Alex spoke, his voice cutting through the tension. Adeline is pack now, Frostclaw. She's earned her place through combat and choice, and anyone who questions that can take it up with me directly." His smile was all ice and threat. "I assume you didn't travel here just to insult my warriors." Garrett recovered his composure, though his eyes remained wary on Adeline. "Of course not. We came to propose an alliance. With Brent gone and the South in chaos, the Eastern territories need stability. Your victory proved your strength. We'd like to align with that strength rather than oppose it." "In exchange for what?" Alec asked. "Trade rights? Territorial agreements? Mutual defense pacts? The usual arrangements." Garrett paused. "And we'd request that you not interfere with Brent's former territory. Let them sort their succession internally." "So you can swoop in and claim it yourselves once they're weakened," Kira interjected. "Transparent, Garrett. Practical," he corrected. "We're all wolves here. We understand how power works." Adeline watched the negotiation unfold, seeing the game beneath the words. Garrett wanted Alec's neutrality so the Eastern Alliance could carve up Brent's territory without interference. In exchange, they'd offer trade and defense, valuable, but not enough to justify abandoning an entire pack to potential conquest. She caught Alec's eye and saw him thinking the same thing. This was a test, not just of her, but of whether Alec's pack had truly changed from its isolated, purely defensive stance. "Counterproposal," Alec said. "We'll negotiate trade and defense agreements, but Brent's former pack gets protection during their succession crisis. No outside interference, no territorial grabs. They choose their next alpha freely." "Why would you care?" the female alpha asked. "They were your enemies." "Because the wolves in that pack aren't responsible for Brent's choices. They deserve the chance to build something better under new leadership." Alec's gaze was steady. "And because my pack believes in defending those who can't defend themselves. That includes former enemies, if the situation warrants." Adeline's heart stuttered. He'd taken the lesson the Fang had taught her, strength in service rather than domination, and made it pack policy. Changed 15 years of isolation because of what she'd shown him. Garrett looked between Alec and Adeline, understanding dawning. "She really has changed you. The Ice King, suddenly interested in mercy?" "Not mercy. Strategy." But Alec's slight smile suggested otherwise. "A stable South benefits everyone. Chaos breeds opportunity for outside threats. Rogue packs, human encroachment, worse. Better to help them rebuild under terms favorable to us than let them collapse completely. And if we refuse this counterproposal, then negotiate with someone else. I'm not interested in alliances built on predation." Alec stood, a clear dismissal. "You have until tomorrow to decide. For now, you're guests. Enjoy the hospitality." The Eastern Alphas withdrew, clearly not expecting such a direct challenge. As they left, Adeline caught Garrett's backward glance, reassessing, calculating, seeing her not as a victim to be pitied, but as a force that had fundamentally shifted Northern politics. Good. Let them see. That evening, Adeline found Alec alone in the binding room where they'd first explored the Fang's power. He stood studying the ancient symbols on the walls, his expression distant. "You changed your entire strategic position because of me," Adeline said. "Was that wise? Was it wise when you threw yourself into Bloodwater Gorge?" He turned to face her. "We both took risks that seemed insane at the time. Sometimes insanity is just vision everyone else lacks." Pretty words for potentially catastrophic political decisions? Maybe. He moved closer, and the air between them felt charged, electric. Or maybe I'm tired of ruling through fear alone, tired of isolation masquerading as strength. You showed me there's another way, not weak, not soft, but human, connected. "We're wolves," Adeline pointed out. "You know what I mean." Alec's hand came up to cup her face, the touch gentle despite his calloused warrior's hands. "I've spent 15 years being the Ice King, cold, distant, untouchable. It kept me alive and my pack safe, but it also made me forget why survival matters, what we're actually protecting." His thumb traced her cheekbone and Adeline's breath caught. "Then you arrived," he continued quietly, "broken and desperate and refusing to stay that way, forcing me to see that strength without purpose is just violence, that protecting people means actually caring about them, not just keeping them alive." "I didn't force you to do anything," Adeline whispered. "You did. Just by being yourself, by choosing to grow instead of giving up, by showing me that change doesn't mean weakness, it means courage. His forehead touched hers, their breath mingling. I'm falling for you, Adeline. Have been since you stood in my training yard and told my wolves to come take the fang if they could. Maybe before that. Maybe from the moment you chose to jump rather than surrender. The confession settled into her bones, warm and terrifying and right. Not a mate bond's artificial compulsion, but genuine emotion earned through shared struggle and honest recognition. I don't know how to do this, Adeline admitted. The only relationship I've ever had nearly destroyed me. I don't trust my own judgment about this. Then don't trust judgment. Trust what you feel. Alex's hands framed her face now, holding her gently but firmly. Do you feel this? Whatever's between us. She did. Had felt it growing from the first moment he'd saved her, through every brutal training session and honest conversation and shared battle. A connection that felt nothing like the mate bond, cleaner, clearer, chosen rather than inflicted. Yes, she breathed, but what if I'm wrong again? What if... He kissed her. Not demanding, not taking, offering. His lips against hers, warm despite his Ice King reputation, tasting of pine and winter and promise. The fang blazed hot against her chest, approving, and Adeline felt power surge between them. Not the fang's magic, but the raw electricity of two people finally acknowledging what they'd been dancing around for weeks. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Alex's smile was soft and genuine. Still think you're wrong? He asked. I think I'm terrified, Adeline admitted. But maybe that's okay. Maybe being terrified and doing it anyway is the entire point. It is. He pulled her close, and she let herself lean into his strength. We don't have to rush this. Don't have to define it or make it official. Just let it be what it is. See where it goes. Relief flooded through her. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people exploring something new at their own pace. I can do that, she said. They stood together in the ancient room, surrounded by symbols of power and protection, forging something that felt infinitely stronger than any magic. The next morning brought Garrett's decision. He'd accept Alex's terms. The Eastern Alliance would negotiate in good faith, provide trade agreements and mutual defense, and grudgingly leave Brent's former pack alone during their succession. You drive a hard bargain, Vulov, Garrett said during the formal signing, though I suspect your warrior had something to do with it. He nodded toward Adeline, who stood among the elite guard once again. Adeline speaks for herself, Alex said coolly, as do all my wolves. If that's a foreign concept, perhaps you should examine your own pack dynamics. The barb landed and several of Garrett's warriors shifted uncomfortably, but the alpha just smiled, thin and calculating. Times change, power shifts. The wolf who was once considered worthless now stands among the elite. He met Adeline's eyes. I wonder what other surprises this new era will bring. Guess you'll have to wait and see, Adeline replied. After the delegates departed, pack life settled into new rhythms. Adeline continued training with Kira, learning not just combat, but strategy, leadership, the subtle arts of pack politics. She worked with Alec in the evenings, mastering the fang's power until she could call it and release it at will, precise as a surgeon's blade. And slowly, carefully, she and Alec explored the connection between them. Stolen moments in quiet corners, shared meals, nights spent talking until dawn, about everything and nothing. Building something real on a foundation of honesty and choice. 3 months after the battle, a messenger arrived from Brent's former territory. They'd chosen a new alpha, a young female warrior named Sarah who'd fought against Brent's corruption and won the pack's loyalty through competence and genuine care. She requested a meeting with Alec, and specifically with Adeline. They traveled south together, a small escort of elite warriors. The territory looked different in daylight, without the weight of fear and obligation. Adeline recognized landmarks. The river where she'd trained as a child, the forest where she'd hidden from Brent's anger, the house where she'd discovered his betrayal. None of it hurt anymore. It was just past. Sarah met them at the border, flanked by her own guards. She was younger than Adeline expected, scarred and serious, with eyes that had seen too much too young. Alpha Vulov, she said formally. Thank you for coming. And Adeline, I owe you an apology. Adeline blinked. For what? For not speaking up sooner. I saw what Brent did to you, saw how he treated you, how Lissa mocked you, how the whole pack participated in your erasure. Sarah's voice was steady, but held genuine regret. I was too young, too low-ranked to challenge an alpha, but I should have tried anyway, should have said something. The apology landed unexpectedly. Adeline had convinced herself that no one from her old pack would acknowledge what had happened, let alone express remorse. You're saying something now, Adeline said quietly. That takes courage. I'm trying to build something better here, a pack that doesn't tolerate abuse or look away when wolves suffer. Sarah glanced at her guards, younger wolves, fierce and loyal. But I need help, resources, training, alliances with packs that understand what we're trying to create. That's why you called us here, Alex said. You want formal alliance. I want more than that. Sarah turned to Adeline. I want you to come back, not as mate, not as subordinate, as equal. Co-alpha, if you'll accept. Help me rebuild this pack into something worth being part of. The offer hung in the cold air, massive and unexpected. Adeline felt Alex's presence beside her, steady and calm, felt the fang pulse against her chest, felt the weight of choice, return to where she'd suffered and transform it, or stay north where she'd found belonging. I'm honored, Adeline said carefully. Truly, but I'm Frostclaw now. That's my pack, my home. I can't abandon them. Even to help heal the place that broke you? Especially then, because healing doesn't mean returning to the source of pain, it means building something new elsewhere. Adeline met Sarah's eyes. But I can help in other ways. Training, resources, political support. Alec and I can establish formal alliance, provide what you need to succeed, just not my physical presence. Sarah studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I understand, and I respect it. You found where you belong. I won't ask you to give that up. They negotiated terms over the next hours. Trade agreements, training exchanges, mutual defense pact. By sunset, Brent's former pack had transformed into genuine allies, rather than conquered territory or abandoned chaos. As they prepared to leave, Sarah pulled Adeline aside. You know what you've done, right? The young alpha said. Changed everything. Brent ruled through fear and manipulation. You proved there's another way. Just by surviving, by refusing to stay broken, you showed every wolf in this territory that we didn't have to accept how things were. I was just trying not to die, Adeline said. Maybe. But you did it publicly, dramatically, in a way that forced everyone to see. And now we're all trying to be braver because you were first. Sarah clasped her shoulder. Thank you for jumping off that cliff, for stealing the fang, for all of it. The journey home was quiet, comfortable. Adeline watched the landscape change from southern forests to northern mountains, each mile taking her closer to the fortress that had become home. No regrets? Alec asked as the fortress came into view. About Sarah's offer, no. Adeline leaned into his warmth. I'm exactly where I need to be. Good. His arm tightened around her. Because I have something to ask you. Her heart skipped. What? The pack's been talking. They want to formalize your position, not just warrior, but second, co-leader with Kira. He looked at her seriously. It's a massive responsibility. You'd be part of every major decision, responsible for pack welfare, expected to lead in battle and peace. And you'd be bound to the pack permanently. No leaving, no changing your mind. Everything she'd never had with Brent. Genuine authority, real responsibility, permanent belonging. What do you want? Adeline asked. I want you beside me, as second, as partner, as whatever we become together. Alec's smile was soft, but only if that's what you want. No pressure, no expectations, just honest choice. Honest choice. The thing she'd fought for, killed for, nearly died for. Adeline thought of how far she'd come, from broken mate to warrior, from powerless to wielding ancient magic, from alone to surrounded by wolves who'd die for her as she'd die for them. Thought of Alec, who'd saved her and challenged her and let her choose every step of the way. Thought of the fang, pulsing steady against her chest, content now that she finally understood what it had known from the beginning. She was never meant to be small or soft or decorative. She was meant to be exactly this, strong and scarred and free. Yes, she said simply. I accept. Alec's smile could have melted glaciers. He pulled her close and kissed her, deep and claiming, while the fortress rose before them like a promise kept. The formal ceremony took place under the full moon. The entire pack gathered to witness. Kira stepped forward first, offering her hand to Adeline in the traditional gesture of equals. Welcome, second, she said loud enough for everyone to hear. May your strength serve the pack, your wisdom guide our decisions, and your courage inspire us all. Adeline clasped her hand firmly. I'll do my best not to disappoint. You couldn't if you tried, Kira whispered. You're already legendary and you're just getting started. Then Alec stepped forward and the pack went silent. He held a silver circlet, traditional mark of pack second, inscribed with protective runes. Adeline, he said formally, you came to us broken and desperate. We offered shelter and found something far more valuable, a warrior, a leader, a wolf who reminds us why we fight. He placed the circlet on her head, and it settled perfectly, as if made for her. Welcome home. Welcome to your pack. Welcome to your future. The pack howled, dozens of voices joining in primal harmony, accepting her fully and completely. Adeline howled with them, her voice strong and clear, the fang blazing warm against her chest. She was no longer Brent's discarded mate, no longer the broken she-wolf who'd thrown herself into a gorge. She was Adeline, second of the Frostclaw pack, wielder of the first Alpha's fang, partner to the Ice King, survivor, warrior, leader. She was exactly who she was meant to be. Later, alone with Alec in the quiet hours before dawn, Adeline stood at the window watching snow fall over the fortress. He came up behind her, arms circling her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. What are you thinking about? He asked. How different everything is from 6 months ago. How I almost died in that river, and now I'm here. Second of your pack. You're... She hesitated, uncertain what word to use. Mine, Alex supplied simply, if you want to be. No bonds, no compulsion, just choice. But mine nonetheless, if you'll have me. Adeline turned in his arms, meeting those winter eyes that no longer seemed cold, but warm, alive, genuine. Yours, she agreed, and you're mine. Fair trade? Better than fair, best deal I've ever made. He kissed her softly. Though I should warn you, being with me won't be easy. I'm still learning how to thaw, how to connect, how to be something other than the Ice King. Good thing I'm still learning how to be something other than broken. Adeline smiled against his lips. We can figure it out together. Together, Alec echoed, and kissed her again. Outside, dawn began breaking over the mountains, painting snow and ice in shades of gold and rose. A new day, a new beginning, a future neither of them had imagined 6 months ago. Adeline thought of the moment before she'd jumped. Standing at the cliff's edge, Brent's hunters closing in, the choice between certain death and possible survival. She'd chosen possible. Chosen to bet everything on herself when no one else would. And that single choice had led her here. Safe, strong, surrounded by wolves who valued her, loved by a man who saw her clearly and chose her anyway. The fang pulsed one last time, then settled into quiet contentment. Its work was done. It had found the right wielder, the wolf worthy of the first Alpha's legacy, not through dominance or ambition, but through courage and compassion and the refusal to stay broken. Adeline touched it through her shirt, feeling its warmth, its approval, its peace. Thank you, she whispered to it, to Alec, to the universe that had given her a second chance. And in the growing light, surrounded by her pack and held by her partner, Adeline finally, completely, let go of the past and embraced the future. She was free. She was home. She was exactly, perfectly enough. The story of the she-wolf who jumped off a cliff and landed in a new life was complete. But her real story, the one she'd write with her own choices, her own strength, her own heart, was just beginning. And she couldn't wait to see where it led.